Hello and welcome to Mountain Patriot Homestead. We are in the kitchen. It is a cold day outside, but we are cooking up something to warm us all the way to the bones, and that is some good old beef stew. The meat that we're going to be using, as well as most of the vegetables, were grown right here on the homestead. So we're just bringing it back, that whole farm to table thing, and we couldn't be happier for what we're gonna be having for supper. So y'all join us. I'm starting with a 2.5 pound chuck roast and just cutting the meat off the bone. I'm going to be trimming it up and setting aside the pieces I'm going to be using for the stew, and the rest of it I'm going to be saving for trimmings. Stew is a wonderful way to use some of your tougher portions of meat, and it also stretches your meals out where you can have leftovers, or you can feed more people with less meat. So out of the 2.5 pound chuck roast, I got about 1.5 pounds, just a hair over, of meat that we're going to be using for the stew. And then the other pound is the trimmings. Now don't worry, I'm not going to just throw this away. It will actually go back in the freezer, and then it will be used later to make dog food. So when I tell y'all that we don't waste anything, we really don't, because this will be cooked up and the dog will really appreciate that later for her homemade dog food. I gather up some of my main ingredients for the stew, and I'm going to be preparing them on the stovetop in my large cast iron Dutch oven. I'll start by heating just 2 or 3 tablespoons of vegetable oil. And here I just have some all-purpose flour. It's probably about 1/2 cup or so, because I want to have plenty to be able to coat the meat. Adjust that depending on the amount of meat that you're doing. And to it, I'm not going to put a whole lot of anything in the flour, just a little bit of salt, just to give it a little flavor. I think I've said little about 4 times right there in one sentence, but you get the meaning. So here we go. I'm just going to stir that up in there. And over in my Dutch oven, I do have the oil heating up, because the first thing I will do is I will brown this meat, because I want it to, when it is cooking later as a stew, I want that to just have it kind of creates its own gravy, so to speak. It's not necessarily going to be a thick gravy, but I do want to have a thicker consistency. I don't want it to be soup. Soup's not bad. I love soup, and I eat soup all year long, but I want this to be a good, hearty, stick to your ribs kind of stew that a cold day like today deserves. And so I'm just going to do this meat in batches, because I want it to get a good coating. See, it's not a batter, it's just a coating, but I just want it to have that good coating on the outside. So I just sprinkle that around in this meat that I have here. And to keep it from gumming up too much on my hands is why I'm using this little paddle. I don't know how many of you own Instant Pots, but if you do, you will probably recognize this as one of the utensils, I guess, that came with it. And I use those little things for everything. I use the spoon looking one a lot of times for spooning out flour out of my canisters, and then I use these little spoons for, I say spoon, it's actually pretty flat, so it's not really a spoon, but I use it for a lot of things such as this. But what I think it's originally meant for is the rice. Like when you fix rice in your Instant Pot. Do y'all own Instant Pots, and do you use yours for rice? I love mine for rice. I love it for boiled eggs. But that's not, you know, I use my Instant Pot for a lot of things. It's a pressure cooker. And that's what it does. But mine also has some other gadgets on it that I rarely use. Some of them I've never used, like there's a cake feature on mine, and I've never used that portion of it. I have used can't say it, but I've used it. I've used the yogurt function on mine. I love, love, love making Greek yogurt at home. It is so much better. It's not as tart. I don't like sour yogurt, and that may sound weird because I think yogurt's actually supposed to be kind of sour, but I don't like it real tart. Even though I like pickles, I don't want yogurt real tart. I'm gonna pull this piece, a little extra fat piece, pull it off. But I love my Instant Pot. Actually, I have 2 Instant Pots and 1 off-brand. And every once in a while I will have all of them going at the same time, depending on what I'm cooking for. So they do come in handy. They speed things up sometimes. But that is not what we're using today. We're going to be using the stovetop, and we're using my good old cast iron. You can use whatever type of pot. If you have a stainless steel, if you just have a regular old pot that, you know, you found at the thrift store, I've still got some of those pots around. So, oops, there's one I almost missed. Okay, so I am going to start by browning this up in the Dutch oven. And you can see back here I've got some other things. This stuff all came out of my freezer. Now it has flour on it, but it came out of my freezer. These are just some little hot peppers, bell peppers, and some onion. That will also be getting chopped up and going in with the stew, but not right now. Let's get it to browning. I've got the first batch browned up, so I'm going to take it off, set it aside, and get the second batch started. So I finished browning the meat, and I've taken it out of my pan. I've added my onions and peppers in here. I don't want to brown them. I just want to soften them just a little bit, just so all of those flavors are going to come out into this stew. And I've got some purple onions and white onions, and I've got bell peppers, and I've got jalapeno peppers. And even in some of my jalapenos, I left some of the seeds in because I like a little bit of spice to my food. You can leave that out. You don't have to put any certain vegetables in it in your stew like I like in mine. As a matter of fact, a lot of people put carrots in their stew. Neither one of us like cooked carrots, so we don't put them in our stew or soups. So if you like it, toss it in there, but I'm going to be putting potatoes in here just a little later, but I want my meat to cook some first. There we go. That's how I want it. I just want them softened, not cooked. Now I'm going to add my meat back in there. You see that meat is not cooked. It is only brown. Stir that up in there a little bit. Now I'm going to put my spices directly onto my meat and vegetables. Again, this is the point where you add whatever spices you like and whatever amount you like. If you notice there, I'm putting some crushed red pepper. Yes, I know I already have some jalapeno in there, but this is going to be a big pot of stew, so I want it to have a big flavor. And I am going to add a little bit of black pepper in there. Again, season it to your taste. Some salt. Now I will taste this before I serve it to see if it needs more salt, and I always suggest that. You can take more salt and add later, but boy, it's very difficult to take salt out once it's in there. Nearby impossible. I know some people say they have little tricks for it, but I just soon add it as I go. This is garlic powder. If you've got fresh garlic and you want to put that in there, by all means go ahead. Now this next thing is something I put in pretty much all roast, stews, beef dishes, and that is bay leaves. I love the taste of bay leaf. Stir that up in there a little bit. And you know, when we started out, it looked like we had a lot of oil in there, but once we've gotten through with all of our browning and softening and all of that, there's really not a lot left, and that oil is going to mix with that little bit of flour that was on there, and that is going to make that roux or the little bit of thickness to that stew that I'm looking for. And this is about 3 quarts. I'm sorry, I am splashing everywhere. Hope it didn't get you. This is about 3 quarts of beef broth. Now you can use homemade beef broth. You can use broth you bought out of a carton in the store. You can make it out of bouillon. Just whatever's your favorite type of broth or what you have on hand. And I'm just going to stir that up. And I don't want to rush the cooking of this. I want this to slow simmer on the stove. I've got it on low, and I'm just going to let this, sorry about the phone in the background, just going to let this cook low and slow. And we'll be adding potatoes later on, so don't go away. here we go. We got a bowl of steaming hot beef stew ready. Got me a slice of cornbread on the side. And I think this is a perfect ending to a cold winter day. So let's just try it and see if it turned out as wonderfully as it smells. I'm gonna have to be very careful because it just come off the fire. So let's see. Oh, it smells so good. Oh, and it tastes very good. It's very hot. If you didn't understand that, it tasted very good and it is very hot. Those peppers, both the sweet and the hot peppers, made it taste wonderful. All those flavors in there just melded together, and I don't know if you can see or not, but see that this is the gravy I was talking about. It's really not a gravy, but it's not a soup either. It is thicker, and it is just has a wonderful flavor. I'm gonna go sit down and enjoy my meal, and I hope each one of you have a wonderful evening. I love y'all. Mountain Patriot Homestead, signing out.